Hello and welcome back to Library of Ruina Ranked. In this video, we'll be covering all the pages from Impuritas Civitatis. Our first page is True Trigram Formation. This is a 4-cost rolling 7 to 10 pierce, 8 to 11 slash, 6 to 9 block. The slash deals 5 bonus damage on hit, and on use, the user gets an effect based on which trigram they used. Tsun adds 1 power to all the dice, Kun gives the user 2 protection and stagger protection on combat start, Gam restores 1 light, and Ri draws 2 pages. This page is fairly hard to rate completely in a vacuum since a lot of its power is directly tied to a passive. Usually, you're going to want to cast a Ri or Chun, but the benefit is that this page can be whatever you want it to be. Its rolls are pretty incredible even without the power boost. It can give you more tank stats, cut its cost, or be 2/3 of a will of the prescript. The flexibility and raw power means that this page is an S+. Impugnatia Ultima is next. This is a 4-cost rolling 5 to 9 slash, 5 to 9 pierce, 5 to 8 blunt, 4 to 7 blunt counter. Additionally, on use, the user discards all pages from hand and gives all dice on the page 2 power. And this page is the ultimate discard enabler, with insane rolls, triple offensive dice, and a strong counter die. Of course, if you aren't in a discard deck, then you probably shouldn't be running this, but in a discard deck, it's an S-. Double-Edged for Encounter is a 3-cost rolling 7 to 10 block, 6 to 8 blunt, 5 to 8 slash, with the first 2 dice boosting the max value of the next die by 3. I'm not too huge on this page. There's no utility to speak of, and while if you win all the clashes, this page is pretty good, losing a clash means the page becomes quite bad. At this point of the game, bomb pages can't stand up on their rolls alone usually, so this page is just a C. Divinatory Impact is a 5-cost rolling 7 to 10 slash, 6 to 10 block, 6 to 10 blunt, 6 to 9 pierce, 5 to 9 evade. This page has 1 of each dice type, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately though, it's generally not worth using. The evade will act like a counter die most of the time, and it snuffs mass summations quite handily, but aside from that, it's just a mediocre page with okay rolls for delight. It's not unplayable, but the high light investment means it can't be anything higher than a C-. Up next is Augury Kick. This 3-cost rolls 7 to 12 blunt, 6 to 8 block. The blunt gives 2 strength to the user next seen on hit, and on use it gives 1 strength to the user. This is the generic equivalent of Kali's Focus Spirit. 3 strength is quite a lot, and the rolls aren't awful. I'm actually a pretty big fan of this page and put it in most of my decks, and the S- grade reflects that. Celestial Spear is a 3-cost rolling 9 to 20 pierce, 4 to 8 block counter. The pierce deals 5 bonus damage on hit, and on use it draws a page. I'm fairly medium on this page. As a general purpose page, it's lacking in dice count, so while the surrounding utility it has, being page drawn a counter die, is quite good, the core dice of the page make it harder to rate this higher than a C+. Godspeed is a 1-cost rolling 3 to 8 slash, 3 to 7 pierce, and on use, the user gains 1 haste next scene. Then, if their speed is 7 or higher, all dice gain 1 power. This is an interesting page as it's both the enabler and payoff for haste. Unfortunately though, it rolls way too low and has too little utility to be anything other than an F. Unyielding Strike is next. This is a 3-cost rolling 5 to 9 slash, 4 to 8 blunt, 4 to 8 block, and on use it restores 1 light. Compared to Blind Faith, you lose it on dice type consistency, the situational bonuses from having the power loss with a higher roll average, and a stronger dice placement in exchange for a slightly higher modified average roll. I think it's pretty much the same as Blind Faith, maybe slightly stronger, but since you get it later, it only gets a B-. After Image is a 2-cost rolling 4 to 10 evade, 5 to 9 pierce, and on combat start, it halves all status ailments on the user rounded up. In receptions with heavy status infliction, this page is a very clean counter to it, and otherwise is just alright. I'd say a C+ normally, but up to a B+ if you're cleansing a good amount of debuffs. Confrontation is a 2-cost rolling 3 to 6 block, 5 to 8 pierce, 3 to 7 slash. The pierce recovers 3 stagger resist on hit, and on use it gives 1 protection to all allies next scene. The utility here is okay. 5 protection is a decent amount, but the rolls are just awful. I can't give this anything higher than a D+. Forward March is next. This is a 0-cost rolling 3 to 6 blunt, 2 to 5 slash, and restoring 1 light on use. As always, I'm not a huge fan of light regen without a block die, and while this is probably the strongest double offensive standard light regen, it's just a C+. Brace Up is a 0-cost rolling 3 to 8 pierce. On use, it discards a random page and then draws 2 pages at the start of the next scene. You can generally think of this as a 0-cost that draws a page, but the discard and draw 2 has some interesting effects. First, and most obviously, in a discard deck, this works as an enabler, and even doesn't mess with margin since it draws the pages at the start of the next scene. Additionally, if you have no pages in hand to discard, then it just acts like a clean draw 2, which is also helped with by again drawing the pages at the start of the next scene. The downside is that the rolls are terrible, but the utility is good enough for a B+. Mince is a 2-cost rolling 5 to 8 / 4 to 8 blunt. The slash inflicts 3 bleed next scene on hit, and then blunt inflicts 2 bleed next scene on hit. This page's rolls are pretty bad, but 5 bleed is quite a lot. Without it, the page would be an F, but with it, it's a C-. Ever Spinning Gear Wheel is next. This is a 4-cost rolling 7 to 10, 7 to 10 / 4 to 5 block. The 1 inflicts 4 smoke on hit, the 2 inflicts 3 smoke on hit, and on use, it gives the user 7 smoke. This is an incredible smoke generation tool. 14 smoke is the most generation in a single page, and the rolls are good as well. This page is, in my opinion, the best smoke enabler in the game, and is an S tier page. Suspicious Contract is a 1-cost rolling 3 to 5, 3 to 4, 2 to 4 block, but it restores 1 light upon being discarded. I actually like this page more than insurance coverage. The effect is the same, but I'd rather have the triple block dice than the double offensive in this case, because you should only be paying this page in the fail case where you need to turn the turtle to draw into a discard all effect. You do get it a bit later though, so it's still just a B-. Let's Have Some Fun is a 2-cost rolling 4 to 7 block, 3 to 8 pierce, and on use it restores 4 light. This is a very simple negative 2-cost. The rolls are slightly better than the Will of the City, but restoring 2 light is worse than restoring 1 light and drawing 1 page. This is still an S tier page though. Our next page is Gugugu. This is a 2-cost rolling 4 to 5 block, 5 to 8, 5 to 6 blunt. This page is a Creek side grade, having the same dice spread and roll average. It's slightly better because the power is slightly stacked more into the offensive dice, it has a thinner roll range with 2 guaranteed emotion coins, and the dice placement is better. But Creek's really fallen off, so this page is just a C-. Blood Spreading is a single-use 6-cost mass summation rolling 17 to 25 slash, and the user recovers HP equal to the damage dealt on hit. This is a really strong mass attack. The roll range isn't incredible for 6 light, but being able to recover your entire health bar is rather strong, and this level of recovery makes this page an S. Rekindled Strike is a 3-cost rolling 11 to 22 pierce, 4 to 5 block. The pierce inflicts 6 burn on hit, and on use it inflicts 2 burn to self, but lowers the cost of a random copy of Blazing Strike the user has by 1. On its own, this page is pretty decent. 6 burn is quite a lot, the block is a bit weak, but there's a lot of power in the offensive die. The cost reduction isn't much, but it's not nothing and bumps this page up to a B+. Beatdown isn't so lucky. This is a 5-cost rolling 18 to 37 blunt, and on Clash Win, it reduces the power of all dice on the target's page by 5. 5 light for a single die is not exactly a deal I'm excited for. I do appreciate the power reduction reducing the damage you'll take, but I would have rathered it just give me more dice. I think this page is unfortunately an F tier. Chorus is next. This is a 3-cost rolling 5 to 9 slash, 5 to 9, 5 to 9 blunt, and on combat start, it gives all allies 1 strength, but loses the effect afterwards. With the effect, this page is like an A+, but without it, it's only a C+ or thereabouts on the roll range alone. Triple offensive is nice, especially when you're strength stacking, but for general use, it's probably just a B+ overall. Crimson Claws is a 2-cost rolling 4 to 7 blunt, 3 to 8, 3 to 7 slash, all recovering 2 HP on hit. This is a fairly simple page. Triple offensive dice, a bit of healing to cover for no real utility or defense. It's great when free hitting, but isn't bad when clashing, just an overall solid value page at an A+. Next up is Overspeed. This is a 5-cost rolling 3 to 7 block, 3 to 6, 3 to 6 blunt, both giving 1 haste next scene on hit, and on use, if the speed is higher than the target's, all dice gain 6 power. With the boost, this page rolls 9 to 13, 9 to 12, 9 to 12, which is still below average for what I'd expect from a 5-cost, and this one is only conditionally that way, so it gets an F. Rooster's Crow is a 2-cost rolling 4 to 7 slash, 3 to 6 block, 3 to 7 blunt, and on combat start it gives 1 strength to 2 random allies. This is an okay page. The clashing is quite poor, and while the effect is nice, it doesn't really make it a page I want to play, so it's just a C. Unity Bolster is a 1-cost rolling 3 to 8 blunt, 3 to 7 slash, and on combat start, all other allies using a Unity page gain 1 power and all their dice. The Unity pages are pretty hard to rate on their own, because if it's the only Unity page getting used, all of them are Fs, but when you combine all the effects, you get some incredibly efficient pages. I'll be evaluating assuming that all of the effects will be triggered, which means this page would be an S+, but losing each extra die reduces the evaluation by about 2 grades, and losing the power lowers it by about 1 grade. Unity coordination is next. This is a 2-cost rolling 5 to 8 pierce, 4 to 8 slash, and on combat start, all other allies using a Unity page get a 4 to 8 slash die added onto the page. Again, like Unity Bolster, this page will be evaluated assuming all the effects are triggered, which would make this page an S because it costs 2 light, but the base dice are slightly better. Unity Bulwark is another 2-cost. This one rolls 6 to 9 block, 5 to 8 pierce, and on combat start, all other allies using a Unity page get a 6 to 9 block die that comes first. This is the worst of the Unity pages individually because of the block die, but is nonetheless important to cast and still very strong at an S- when all the Unity effects are applied. Deluge of Brachioquidasis is a 6-cost mass individual rolling 5 to 8 pierce, 5 to 8 slash, 4 to 7 pierce. It's usable after the second scene, and on use, it's exhausted and added back to hand after 4 scenes. This is a fairly simple mass attack, decent dice, and it kind of draws a page every 4 scenes since it doesn't take up your page draw for the turn. Compared to Mirage Storm, this is undoubtedly worse, but it's still quite good at a B. Our next page is Unending Thirst. This is a 6-cost mass individual rolling 6 to 9, 8 to 19 slash. The 2 recovers 3 HP on hit, it's usable after the second scene. On use, it's exhausted and adds back to hand after 4 scenes, and if the user has recovered 20 or more HP in the act, its cost is reduced by 2. At 6 light, this is pretty good, probably like an A- or an A, but the cost reduction is so trivial to reach that this will almost always cost 4 after the first use, and will often cost 4 before the first use if you cast it on scene 4 or 5. At 4 light, it's obviously very bonkers, so this page gets an S. Straining Strings is a 6-cost mass individual rolling 6 to 10, 6 to 10 pierce, both inflicting 1 binds next scene on hit. Additionally, it's usable after the second scene. On use, it's exhausted and add back to hand after 4 scenes, and all allies with Puppeteer strings recover 20 HP and stagger on use. This page has pretty strong utility, inflicting up to 10 binds and recovering 20 HP and stagger. The rolls could be a little stronger for a 6-cost mass attack, but still good enough for an S-. Pitch Black Pulverizer is a 6-cost rolling 13 to 20, 13 to 20 blunt, 6 to 10 block. The 1 deals 5 bonus stagger damage on hit, and the 2 deals 5 bonus damage on hit. This page has some incredible clashing, and unlike Overspeed, it always has its clashing power. This page is well worth the light cost and is an A+. Climax is a 5-cost mass summation rolling 1 to 50 blunt, dealing 8 bonus stagger damage on hit. It's usable after the second scene. On use, it's exhausted and add back to hand after 4 scenes, and inflicts random status effects to targets randomly. Next scene from Too Fragile, Disarm, Feeble, Protection, and Stagger Protection. This page's roll range is pretty insane, but the average isn't bad. It's not a top tier mass attack, especially since it could help the enemies, but that situation is less likely than you rolling super high and destroying them, so it's good enough for an A+. Tackle Mount is next. This is a 6-cost rolling 11 to 15 blunt, 35 slash, 35, 35 blunt. The 1 destroys all of the clashed loser's dice, the other dice deal bonus damage based on the amount of bleed the target has, and all the dice recover 3 HP on hit. I think this page isn't quite as good as Pitch Black Pulverizer. While the damage is higher, it doesn't enable itself, and the clashing ends up being worse since the 1 is quite a bit weaker. It's still quite strong at an A- though. Cordyceps Climax is a 6-cost mass individual rolling 6 to 11, 5 to 10 blunt, both inflicting 1 paralysis next scene on hit. It's usable after the second scene. On use, it's exhausted and add back to hand after 4 scenes, and it inflicts 2 fragiles to all enemies this scene on use. This page is quite similar to Straining Strings, having the same roll average, but I think both of its utility pieces are stronger. Paralysis is better than Bind, and 10 Fragile is better than 20 HP and Stagger. It's strong enough to get an S. Thought Gear Indoctrinate is a 5-cost mass individual rolling 5 to 9, 5 to 9 pierce. It's usable after the second scene. On use, it's exhausted and add back to hand after 4 scenes, and if one of the attacks hits at least once, all other allies restore 1 light at the end of the scene. I think this mass attack is a bit weaker than most of the other ones we've covered so far, but it's still strong. In a support-oriented build, this page can be very useful, restoring 4 light to the rest of your team, and while it's taxing on the user's light, it's still good enough to be an A. Flames of Despair is a 1 cost rolling 3 to 8 slash 3 to 6 blunt. The slash inflicts 1 burn on hit, and on use, if the user is at emotion level 3 or higher, it adds a copy of Scorching Desperation to hand at the start of the next scene and inflicts 1 burn to all enemies. Scorching Desperation is a 5 cost mass individual rolling 14 to 20 pierce, inflicting 3 burn next scene on hit. This is a roundabout pseudo 6 cost mass attack, but it's pretty good. 14 to 20 is quite likely to just win everything, and the burn infliction is quite good. If your utility is good enough, then you can cast it every scene unlike other masses we've seen, but that's unlikely. I wish there was a bit more utility on it, but it's still very good at an S-. Taste Test is next. This is a 1 cost rolling 3 to 8 pierce that, on hit, gives the user 1 resilience if they have 2 or less resilience. Resilience prevents X instances of status elements from being applied, and the user loses a stack whenever it triggers. It also restores 2 light on use. This is an alright light regen if you're playing against status defect heavy opponents, but for general use, it's quite a bit worse than the other top options for pure light regen, so it's just a C+. Shaded Strike is a 7 cost rolling 4 to 8 slash 3 to 8 pierce. While it's in hand, its cost is decreased for each clash lost against offensive dice. On combat start, it boosts offensive dice power by 1, and it draws a page on use. This page is really baffling to me. At anything other than 0 light, I'm not very happy to be using this page, and there isn't much synergy for high cost pages, and nothing that differentiates between 4 and greater than 4. I'm pretty sure this page is just completely awful and is an F. Our last page today is Opening Ceremony. This is a 4 cost rolling 6 to 10, 6 to 9, 5 to 9 block. On use, it draws a page, restores a light, and reduces the cost of all pages by 1 for the next scene. This can be a really roundabout light regen if you use 4 pages this scene after using this page, but that requires a lot of setup, especially since using 4 light will probably reduce your ability to clash. I think this page can be really strong, but the clunkiness makes it an A-. In the next video, we'll be covering all of Callie, Bina, Roland, and Argalia's pages. I'll see you soon, and as always, thank you for watching.